Hello, lovely beings. I'm JJ Rose. Let's talk about fear. Why is it that fear is the primary thing that I discuss on my channel about fighting and fear itself and why I'm so vehemently against it? Okay, so let's start out with the basics. Fear itself can be either rational, logical fear, meaning I know that alligator could kill me, or I know that spider is a black widow and it's poisonous. If it gets on me and bites me, I could die. That's logical, rational fear. And then there's the opposite, which can manifest in so many different ways. These are things like fear of dating because I'm fear of getting hurt, or fear of opening up my third eye, or fear of doing spiritual work because I don't know what that entails and I might have to come up against some bad stuff. And I know some of you are laughing out there and feeling very personally attacked right now, but know that the reason why I'm doing this is because I love you and that I really, really care about you. And I want to set some things straight so that you can move away from the fear and actually grow, develop, and bloom into the wonderful, lovely beings that you are. So logical, rational fear is basically, that is dangerous, I could die, not a good idea, let's not do that. The other types of fear, which there's so many words I could use to describe it, but we're just going to call it the other kind at this point. These are the kinds that hold you back. These are the fears that prevent you from growing. These are the fears that prevent you from learning and developing. These are the fears that keep you in that tiny little bubble of whatever it is that you've created. And it's really, really hard to break out of that bubble because you have this fear insulating you inside of this little cocoon. And sometimes that cocoon is self-made and you feel very, very happy being there. And so why would you want to do anything to break out of it, right? But alas, we live in the real world and we live in a place where our duty is to come here and experience and learn and grow and proceed forward. So when it comes to spiritual fear, the things that I've been hearing a lot from more than a few of you are, I've been afraid to open my third eye because I don't want to see something bad. Some of you, it's, I'm afraid to really jump into this work because what if all of a sudden, I've got all these horrible people coming towards me and I wasted all my energy trying to fix people that really don't want to be fixed. And then there's some of you who are just in this cycle of fear where you're kind of stuck. Like, you shouldn't be afraid. You have the tools in order to overcome whatever it is that's frightening you. But instead of that, you just go into this fear and you run around like a chicken with its head cut off, which I hate that phrase, but it's the only analogy that I know that will work for this particular analogy. So let's address a couple things. First and foremost, when you open up your third eye, please remember that you have an entire spirit team plus your higher selves that are watching out for you. So if your third eye opens, you're not immediately going to start seeing all the nasty, ugly stuff unless that's the state you're in. So if you're not in a good place, if you're in a very dark and gnarly place in your life, if you're not happy, if you're, for instance, very toxic, and you know that about yourself, right? I completely understand not wanting to open up because you already instinctually know you're carrying all that and you're like that. So therefore, like attracts like, right? So therefore, if you were to open your third eye, your fear is real that you're going to see some pretty gnarly, nasty stuff because that's kind of how you are. Well, my recommendation for that would be, All right, take a good hard look about how you are and see how's that working for you. Like, is that really a good place to be in? And if you're not happy with how you are and your energy, then what are you doing to change it? And I can hear some people groaning right now, like, oh, well, what if I'm around negative, toxic people? Okay, unfortunately, the world has a lot of those people, okay? They exist, they're here for a reason. Now, if you're directly living with one and you feel like whatever this person is bringing in and around would not make it a safe space for you to open up, I get that. But let's think of the reverse. If your third eye is open and you're able to see because you're in a good place spiritually, emotionally, physically, right? And you're not carrying around all that negativity and drama, and you're able to see what this other person is dealing with. Like, let's just say you think that they're toxic or they're rude or they're awful personality, whatever. And now you're able to see what is causing them to be that way. Sometimes you're going to see that it's a spirit influence. Sometimes you're going to see that they're just really happy in their little cycle of negativity. And that's where they want to stay. They don't want help. They just want to continue on in their negative way. And the reason I bring that up is because knowledge is power. So if you know what this person is dealing with, you can either have more empathy and compassion for them because they're being afflicted, and hopefully talk to them and get them the help that they need. Or if you just see that they just love walking around in this little, vacuum of awfulness, and that's just who they are and they enjoy it, and you didn't understand that before you opened up your third eye, well, then you have the choice to get away from the person. You have your choice at that point to say, okay, you stay over there, I'm gonna stay over here. And whether that means you physically separate, or even if it just means that you need to make your bubble thicker or stay further away from the person as you can, like live on separate sides of the house, or whether that's the impotence for you to move out or for you to get on your own or finally leave this person alone. Because there really are people out there who do not want help. They pretend they do. They'll tell you that they do, but all they do is cycle around in their ball of negativity and fear because that's their happy place. Does someone like me understand that? I mean, I can understand it from their perspective. It doesn't work for me, but again, knowledge is power, and that's the reason why it's important to know what you're working with. So let's say you're in a good place, but you're just scared of seeing the bad stuff. There's no one negative really around you in your immediate proximity, but there's just fear there, right? That you're going to see dark stuff. Again, I hearken back to you have an entire spirit team plus your higher selves that are at the ready to make sure that while you open up spiritually, you are doing so in a manner that is healthiest and safest for you. So you're not going to open your third eye and immediately see like a room full of dead people or spirits. Most of the time it starts out very, very slow and easy. Sometimes you just start seeing things in your peripheral vision, and then all of a sudden it works up to you see things move, and then it works up to seeing entities or seeing lights or seeing auras, things like that. Like, very, very few times are you ever thrown in the deep end and just told, like, figure it out. It's very, very rare. I can tell you from my experiences, the reason why that happened to me so often in my life is because I already had the tools. I was already prepared to be thrown into the deep end. I was taught how to swim, taught what to do in advance, just the same way that you will be. Okay, so opening up your third eye, don't be afraid, please, because know that spirit and your spirit team and all of your higher selves really do have your back. And they're never going to put you in a nasty situation that you're not able to handle. You know that old adage, God never gives us more than we can handle? It's true. It really is. And let me tell you, I am coming off of last week was a really rough week on a multitude of reasons. And I was able to handle it. I mean, there were a couple points where I wanted to whine or, scream about it a little bit or vent, but, that's why we have friends to do that with. But that being said, I was completely and utterly able to handle it. All right, so this next part, some of you are really going to feel called out about. But again, same instance, I love you and I care, and this is why I'm taking up my time in order to make something like this for you to listen to. I've heard from some of you that there is a fear of opening up because you're not quite sure what your purpose is. You're not quite sure what you need to do with it. And when we get down to brass tacks, it really comes down to you're afraid of the responsibility that it holds when you fully open up. And that's pretty heavy, right? I can feel some of you clutching your pearls right now. I love it. All right. When you start to open up and your true purpose is, because we always have more than one purpose, are really brought to your attention, it doesn't mean that if you haven't opened up a healing center within 2 months, all is lost. Very, very rarely when you open up is that much responsibility heaped on you. Most of the time, it's one person here, one person there, a lot of self-healing, right? Because as you open up, you start to see a lot of things about yourself that you might not have realized before, especially if you were living in your little cocoon of fear because that was your happy place. And you're insulated not only from the outside world, spiritually and physically, but also somewhat from yourself. It's really hard to do shadow work when you're not open to seeing the deeper parts about yourself that you need to work on. Now, shadow work comes in a whole variety of things. It can be something small as having a realization about a certain behavior that you've always done. It can be even discovering, why are you afraid? And dealing with that. And if it is fear of responsibility, you know what? I'm sure if you really take stock of your life and look around, you have a ton of responsibility already on your lap and you're handling it just fine. So a little more responsibility isn't going to hurt you. You're completely and utterly prepared for it. Unless you're 4 years old, but my content is not made for children, so I'm not even worried about that. And if there is a 4-year-old listening to this, hi! Now, there are other fears. There's fears of rejection, fears of failure, and let me address both of those. Fears of rejection. Okay, when you enter into opening up spiritually, you're going to encounter a lot of people who do not want to hear what you have to say. And I know I've been vocal about this before. I have a ton of people in my life who have no clue that I have a YouTube channel or any of this stuff that I do. They have no clue about that part of my life. Why? Because A, they're just really not interested. It's not their wheelhouse, nothing that they want to be a part of. And also because they don't care. That's not their path. And I am not here to ram this down anyone's throat. This is why on my intro, I'm very, very clear. If I do not resonate with you, please go find someone else who does. Because my job is not to convince you. If you resonate with me, if what I talk about makes sense to you and you're okay, yeah, I want to listen to more of that. Great. I'm honored. If it doesn't, that's fine. Go find whoever you do resonate with in whatever capacity that is. And again, no judgment. So fear of rejection, let's face it, we're pretty much all adults here. We've all been rejected in one way, shape, or form, whether it's in relationship, whether it's in a job, you didn't get the job, or people didn't want to be friends with you. At some point in your life, you've had to deal with rejection. Is it fun? No, it always stings a little bit, right? But then there's a point where you have to take a step back and say, hey, if that job didn't want to hire me, where's the rose-colored glasses? Like, turn around, because you may have dodged a humongous bullet. I actually had a real-life situation with someone who was like stoked about this job. I mean, everything about it on paper sounded amazing. And they went to the interview. I mean, talk about qualified. Like, they were perfect for it, right? They got along with everyone in the interview. Everything was just roses and hunky-dory. And so we're all sitting there and we're completely stoked. I mean, there was almost no reason why this company would not hire this person. So a week later, they haven't heard back, and they email in, hey, just wondering, what's going on. And they end up hearing, I'm so sorry, we decided we're not going to proceed with that position. And this, I mean, talk about crushed. This person was beyond crushed, right? Because again, everything in this job was perfect. So to hear that all of a sudden they're not going through with the position that they were literally like looking for this person for something like 3 to 6 months was kind of weird and insane, right? So we had to talk about it, and they're super, super duper bummed. And I said, there's got to be a reason for it, and let's just say a prayer on it, and the truth will come out, because the truth always comes out. So we wait, and about a month later, one morning I'm watching the news, and I hear a story about the company that this person had interviewed at. And the company literally was up on charges and was being shut down, and like everything was seized, and half of the employees were arrested. And I just stood there for a second as like this all hits me, and immediately I messaged, my friend, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like read this article right now. And I said, talk about dodging a bullet. Like, you dodged an entire cannon, right? So there's like a teeny tiny example where rejection felt so stingy and so ouchy, and they were so down on themselves. But in all honesty, in the end, could you imagine if this person had taken that job and then they would have ended up arrested just like everyone else was in the company? I mean, whoa. So sometimes when things don't work out, it's in your favor. I know Garth Brooks came out with a song. I love how I throw in the most random facts for you guys, but there's a song by Garth Brooks called Unanswered Prayers. And it really is true. You think at the time this is what you want, like you're running head first into whatever this is, and then it doesn't work out. But when you wait a little bit, most of the time Spirit's really, really kind and shows you why it didn't work out. And I know in relationships, I've had people think, why did this person reject me? What's wrong with me? And then later they end up finding out like who this person really, really was. And it's like, wow, who I thought they were and who I wanted to date was not who the person really is. And take the win, please. Okay? So yeah, does rejection sting a little bit? Of course it does. But that's always when you need to take 3 steps back and look at it from a universal perspective. And most of the time, Spirit's really kind about giving you the why. Fear of failure. Yes, this is a huge thing. There are some people who are so afraid to fail that they literally never start. And this, when I was younger, never really made sense to me. And so I had to see it played out with some adults over and over and over again for me to really, really get it. Okay, so fear of failure is basically you're so afraid of failing that either you never start or you don't put your full effort into it because you're being hindered by your fear. Okay, we've all heard the stories of the people who took every penny of their money, life savings, all of it, to start a business, and it just was a comedy of errors and it never took off, right? And they lost everything. Obviously, that's super scary. Okay, so to that I say, first of all, never live beyond your means. So if it would take every single penny that you own, why would you be doing that? There has to be an easier way in order to start it. So that's the way to combat that fear. Saying, okay, if I want to start a business or whatever it is that you want to start, and it involves money in order to make it happen, do it within your means. And for some of you, that could mean you have to save up for a couple months in order to get, your seeding money for materials or whatever it is that you're trying to do. When it comes to fear of failure for spiritual work, again, remember, this work is not for everyone. And there are tons of ways that you could be doing this work. And you don't have to have a YouTube channel or a website or, I don't know, I see people on TikTok who have like crazy numbers, but I don't know how much they're actually doing readings and interacting with people. So there's lots of different ways that you can be doing this work. Even if it's just you're smiling at a person in the grocery store, you don't know what that meant to them. It doesn't mean that immediately you need to set up shop and create a business. And there's a lot of you who have immense talents, but doing this work on a daily basis isn't right for you yet, whether it's lifestyle or kids or time constraints with other stuff or bills or whatever it is, right? So what you can start doing is using some of your skills practically now in whatever ways are available to you, and then build yourself up. You never know, you're going to team up with somebody, or eventually all of a sudden you'll save up enough so that you can lessen your hours so you can have some free time. I know someone who went on TikTok and basically like blew up within a month and ended up doing readings part-time and then gets paid by the app in order to just do like 1-minute videos here and there. I mean, we've all heard about influencers and how they get paid, and all basically they do is tell you about products and stuff. So, I mean, if there's money to be made anywhere, and let's keep it real. Everyone has bills. Everyone has responsibilities at home. We all have bodies that need sleep, rest, food, all fun, all the good stuff, right? So if it's not exactly what you want it to be right now, just start thinking about what it is that you want and then sit with it for a minute and tell Spirit, hey, if this is what you want from me, then start making it happen and show me the open doors. And it will happen. Now, I hearken back to my own personal story because I think stories sometimes help drive these things home. I had been wanting to do this for years. I was a little bit afraid, I fully admit that, of going out on the internet because I would see things on the internet and people weren't exactly kind. There was a ton of infighting within the spiritual community for a very long time. And on top of all of that, there's just the whole, I don't want to be like X, Y, and Z, right? So then I thought, okay, let's do this project together. And I linked up with Tim, and that was a whole comedy of errors of us just trying to do this together. And then, I ended up getting sick and a whole bunch of other stuff ended up happening. And it was like there was all these delays, right? And I was feeling kind of like, well, I keep getting these downloads and I keep writing all this stuff down, but like, what am I supposed to do with this? Obviously, I'm using it within, my friends circle where it's appropriate. But like, why am I doing all of this? Like, why is this still happening? And then a couple people started urging me, just do it on your own. And then finally one day it hit, and literally everything happened in one day. I mean, it wasn't like I had been thinking about this and like writing stuff down and trying other ways of doing it. And Spirit kept closing those doors for me. And then eventually this one door opened at the end of the hallway, and I had no choice but to evacuate right through that door. And I did it. And hey, I know I am not big. I know I don't have a lot of people on my YouTube. A lot of people don't know who I am. And to be perfectly honest, I'm okay with that. Every single one of you who've subscribed to my channel, every single one of you who have reached out to me, you have touched me in all up in the heart and in the feels, because it's so special, because I have the time to really be able to connect with you and work with each of you in the best way that I can. And sometimes that's just one email back and forth. Sometimes it's just one little message and that's it. But it means a lot to me. And I really didn't come out to do this in order to be, like on a stage somewhere, or on TV or anything like that. I just wanted to give good information without a sales pitch to people who needed it, and try to do a little bit of good in the world where I could. And what's funny is when I look in retrospect of all the years that I had tried doing this and tried to figure out my way and what way I was going to do it, and trust me, I had all sorts of weird ideas, right? Because things have definitely changed over time. But when I look at how it happened and the timing of when it happened, everything happened in absolute perfect timing. So the reason I'm sharing all of that is because I know some of you are thinking, well, what do I do? What's my timeline look like? And hey, our future's never certain, right? Like everything is constantly changing. But if you're in one of those limbo lands right now where nothing's really taking root, but you have all these ideas and you're not really sure where you're going with it and what's going to happen, I'm telling you, just wait for Spirit's timing. I was not born with patience. People think I have the patience of Job. I really don't. I do when it comes to when Spirit tells me to. And all of a sudden I'm just extremely calm and I totally lost my words there. When Spirit calms me, basically that's when I have the patience. But, my normal personality is like go, 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 right? I very rarely am sitting down and just quiet. I have to work really, really hard at that. So with all of these different things that I'm telling you, the reason why I want to address them is because fear is what holds you back. Fear is what prevents you from growing, and fear is what's preventing you from ever taking that chance. And I know I've mentioned it before, the song The Rose by Bette Midler, but those lyrics are pure gold. I mean, whoever wrote that song, whew, because it's true. If you don't try anything, nothing's ever going to happen. And if you don't open yourself up a little bit and just test the waters, how are you going to know if you even want to get in the water or not? And yeah, you can open up a little bit and the water's cold and you close right back up. But at least you tried, right? And it might not be the time for you to fully open up right now. And that's okay. But if you're learning the tools to make sure that you're safe when you do open up, that you know how to protect yourself, and that you're understanding what is in the spiritual realm, which is why I've done all these YouTubes on explaining all these things. Knowledge is power. I mean, could you imagine if someone picked you up right now and you had no military experience whatsoever, no fighting experience, you've never held a firearm in your life? Could you imagine if someone just plucked you up and said, hey, we're sending you right smack dab in the middle of a war. Here's a gun, figure it out. Could you imagine what that terror would be like? That's how some of you feel about opening up in the spiritual world. You feel like you are going to be just plopped right in the middle of some foreign conflict. Spirit is not like that, okay? You can open up gradually. Again, you can always ask your higher selves and your spirit and spirit team, can you please do this in the healthiest manner and safest time frame for me? And they will work with you, because in the end, they really want you to open up too, so they can communicate with you, so you can do whatever it is that you need. I know there's a ton of you out there who have children, and especially young children. And you're wondering, like, okay, how do I deal with them as they age and they start growing up and all these different things start coming into play? Well, if you're spiritually connected and you're able to feel them or hear them in various different ways besides just physical, that's going to give you such an advantage as a parent. And to be honest, most of your kids that are coming through all have extreme spiritual gifts. And if you're feeding them fear, I'm so afraid, there's this going on, that going on, I don't want my kid seeing this, I don't want my kid hearing this. Too bad, so sad. Your kids are going to see it and they're going to hear it whether you want to or not. So the reality is, if you as the parent are fully shored up and you know how to handle yourself and you're teaching your children how to protect themselves and how to use their skills for good, it's only going to benefit you and them. And now you've done the work, even though you don't have a spirit shop or whatever it is that you think you have to have, because I hear a lot of things. You've just taught another generation about spiritual fortification, about how to protect themselves, about, the light versus the dark, about how to deal when certain things come through. How amazing is that work? That's way further than what I'm doing. I'm doing YouTubes for adults who are already grown, and you guys have enough life experience that some of these concepts might be new to you, but some of them are typically a refresher course, right? So think about, as a parent, what you're able to do for your children by teaching them young. And I am going to do an episode soon where I'm going to have my mom on, and we're going to talk a little bit about what it was like to be a parent, not only with gifts, but also a parent to a child who has abilities, and how you're able to foster that. And I'm super excited because I know there are a ton of you out there with children, and I've been asked this question a lot. Also remember, kids can smell fear at 500 yards, okay? So way back in the day, I was taking care of children. That was my job. And there was this old adage that I had learned very, very young, that when a kid falls down, the first thing they do, especially if they're under like 2 or 3, the first thing that child does when they fall down, they look up to see the parent or the adult's reaction. Now, if you put your hands over your face and go, "Oh my God, are you okay?" the kid will start crying. But if you look at them with no reaction, or if you smile, the kid will smile and get right up and run along. Now, obviously, this is like a small trip and fall. Like, they're not really hurt, they fell on carpet or something, or grass. Nothing that really, really hurt them. But for those of you with young kids, watch that. If your kid falls down, or, they kind of fall over, they trip over something, watch. The first thing they do is they look for your reaction, and then their emotional reaction is based off of your reaction. So if you're running around insanely fearful of whatever it is, name your fear, pretty much. I've heard a lot. Your child is feeding off of your fear. And the reason I'm driving this home so much is because, again, you are a parent to the next generation. And these kids that are coming in for about the past 15, 20 years, I haven't met one of them who isn't extremely talented in one way or another. These kids are typically empaths, sensitives from day one. A lot of them are seers. They have all sorts of talents and abilities. So if you're able to foster them while they're young with healthy habits and teaching them to protect and care for themselves physically and spiritually, wow. Can you imagine what our world's going to look like in 20 to 40 years? It's going to be amazing. So I hope I drove home all the points today. If you have questions on anything, again, please email me, reach out. If you have questions or suggestions for episodes that you want me to do, email me, please. All my email information is in the description of every video. I'd love to hear your ideas. If it's something I've already talked on about, I will route you to that video if you're not able to find it yourself. But a lot of the early videos that I did, a lot of those address the main things that people have questions about and the things that people are fearful about. And remember, I do protect all my videos, so you can actually listen to them without calling anything negative forward. I wish you all the absolute best. I wish you growth. I wish you happiness. And I wish you a marvelous time.